Welcome back, it's Leah. This is something that I have struggled with for a very long time, and I thought I would give my input to anyone who's feeling lost and confused about it. This is how to find your niche. Now, I am not saying I'm an expert, but I can give you a few tips on how to find it. Yes, it is true, you need somewhat of a niche. You need some sort of consistency in your videos for people to want to subscribe and keep coming back to you to build a brand. Whenever I see a lot of these YouTube advice videos, they're great. A lot of them do give genuinely good advice, but the way that it's perceived made me feel like overwhelmed. And I know that's probably a me problem and all, but you hear how to find your niche is like, what are your hobbies? What are you interested in? What do you like? And then that can be your thing. But the thing is, like, when your self-confidence isn't the highest and you're like, my hobby is watching YouTube and I am a boring person, or I haven't had time to be interested in my hobbies as of the last few years, that can seem quite overwhelming. So I'm here to tell you that you are not boring. There are many things that you are capable of posting and talking about that will help other people or entertain them. You have plenty of great conversations with people in your real life. You are interesting enough to people that you know in real life. You just don't know how to translate that into video yet. And I understand, I have been there before. So what do you talk to your friends about? What are the mutual topics that you like to talk about that they're interested in, that so are you? What do you do on your free time? And it doesn't have to be an easily categorized interest. Like, I thought, oh my god, like, I don't play video games. I don't necessarily play a specific sport anymore at this stage of my life. I kind of like a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I'm not into like one or two things extremely deeply and passionately as I used to be when I was younger. Because of time constraints and things like that, I am someone who, not only that, but like I like new stimuli. I like to be interested in new things. And that can get confusing as to like, what is it that's like a constant thing? What is it that you're really into? And oftentimes it's there, you just have a hard time recognizing it. So when you go to Barnes and Nobles, what do you gravitate towards? What are the types of genres of books that you like? When you watch movies and TV shows, what are the general genres? When you are attracted to something that you click on either on social media or online or even like a blog post, what is the general theme of that? You have to start paying attention to yourself and stop thinking that you are just this boring person. You are getting in your own way unnecessarily. Now, if you had a camera in front of you and you turned it on and you had absolutely no plan, what would you talk about? And do it. Like, actually just turn on the camera. This is something that I have done many times, and I used to think like, oh my god, I'm just wasting my time talking to this camera and it's not leading to anything. These videos aren't getting posted. I'm not editing them. I don't really like them that much. I didn't like the way that I came across and it sucks. I suck. And then I started to recognize over time that it is practice. I was practicing to get good enough, to get comfortable, to figure out what I feel is worth posting and talking about. You need practice with anything in life. You need practice posting, editing. So go ahead and let yourself do it. Even if all you're doing is spending an hour or two talking to the camera until you get blue in the face and you're kind of like fainting because you've been talking too long and you end up deleting it, that's fine. But when you do this, before you delete, write down, like literally have a notebook, write down like, what did I talk about on each specific day? What was the topic? And what are you gravitating towards? You just have to pay attention to yourself. What do I like talking about? And then number 5 is, how can you make people care about this thing that you like to talk about? We oftentimes think like we have to fit ourselves into the mold of what is popular and what is out there in order to be successful. But if you decide like, I'm gonna pick up a new hobby so that I have something to talk about in YouTube of art, like I'm gonna pick up painting and then I'm going to document my journey of becoming a painter, and that's what my videos are gonna be about like a new technique I learn every week. If you're not really that into it and you're just doing it for the sake of like finding something to make yourself seem more interesting, you will drop off. You will never become consistent if it's not something you're actually passionate about. You have to discover what's already there, what already exists inside of you, and you are a much more interesting and wholesome person than you give yourself credit for. Like, for example, if I want to talk about my certain thoughts on a topic or my philosophy or my way of thinking, then I have to figure out, like, how can these thoughts help somebody else, and like what would be a good title, what would be something that would like grab people's attention, make them care, and give them something. How can I transform these thoughts that I have in my brain that I want to share with somebody and transform it and get the bits and pieces into a format that will give something to somebody else that somebody else will want to watch, and that will give them like a tool. Like, I can have a random thought about something, but if I have no way of transforming it into digestible content that will improve someone's life, that will be interesting to them, that will give them some sort of insight, and if I'm just going to only talk to the camera, like, that's not going to work out. So like, I don't know, if I have a certain opinion on something, let's see what comes to my mind. Okay, if I have certain opinion on, like, for example, what works on YouTube and what doesn't, based off of my research, my personal experience, my trial and error, I can have all these like random jumbled thoughts, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to become a good video. So instead, I have to think to myself, like, of all of this that I have up here, and this particular thought that I'm having, or like this topic that I've been thinking about recently, what of this is useful, and like pick apart parts of your cognition of all of these things that I'm thinking about. They're all valid, they're all useful, but they don't all have to get put out there. What is something that can help somebody who's in my position, or who's been where I've been in the past? For me particularly, this is figuring out what to talk about and stop holding back on the camera, thinking that like I'm wasting my time or it's all pointless, or trying to fit myself into a mold that just isn't working and might not even be what I can enjoy the most. Like, for example, vlogging. A lot of people attempt vlogging, but it's not necessarily for everyone. And like my sit down, talk to the camera videos, a lot of people seem to enjoy more, and I am better suited at the moment talking and giving my ideas in a format that will help someone, rather than making things that are super aesthetic and interesting and being a lifestyle vlogger. That is just what works for me right now. I have to lean into that. Now, when you have videos that do well versus others that don't do as well, it is not because that should be your niche. Oftentimes it's related to external factors, or factors that you are not realizing, like your title was a lot better in those two videos, or it was a more searchable topic, it was a more trending topic at the time. Maybe the way that you started out your intro made that particular thing more interesting to people than the other things that you also like talking about. In the beginning, especially when you have no idea what you're doing still, like, don't get discouraged thinking like, well, people only like when I talk about this one thing, so that's gonna have to be my whole niche. That's the only thing I can talk about now. I have no idea like what I can even say further on this topic. Like, if you give for me, for example, if I gave like 1 or 2 relationship advice videos or something like that, and they end up doing really well versus all my other videos get ignored, and I'm like, oh my god, now I have to be somebody who gives relationship advice. Like, that's not something that's interesting to me. Like, no, maybe just you had a really good title and thumbnail there. You have to let yourself like kind of be fluid and keep experimenting, but maybe it could just be along the lines of like, you talk about philosophy or psychology. Your niche can be a lot broader, and you know what, in fact, like, I think it's more beneficial, because then you have a more creative freedom and you can try out new things, where like if you get hyper specific on what you make, you will only ever attract a certain type of audience, and you may run out of ideas. That's just a beginner's perspective, okay? But try anything, any thought that comes to your mind, anything that you feel like you ever want to talk about, that you would want to like write a journal entry about. Like, what would you write if you had a diary? Besides the things that are like, this is what happened in my day and such, but like, what about the thing that happened? Like, what is interesting? Like, oh, you got in a fight with someone. Why were you pissed off? Or why did they react that way to you? What's a lesson you can learn from that? What's something actually funny and interesting? What's a better way to handle that situation that you now have the perspective on? And like I said, you transform it and you give it out as a digestible piece of content with a good title. And there you go, you talked about something you wanted to talk about, you got something off your chest you wanted to get off your chest, and you entertained somebody and you made their day better. It doesn't have to be like just a one-way thing. Like, it can be mutually beneficial. You can feel fulfilled in the things that you are talking about, while also giving something that is valuable to the people who are listening to you. In fact, I think if you don't do it this way and you just think only about what you can give, what that somebody else will like, then you will feel hollow and you are not going to remain disciplined in continuing this pursuit. Because what matters the most is always how we feel inside about things. Our feelings direct our actions, or they should. I'm a firm believer your feelings are very important. And if it's hollow and you're like, oh wow, I'm creating this thing that's supposed to be fulfilling and artistic, but it doesn't feel like I'm even talking about things that I'm interested in anymore, I'm just doing things based off what somebody else will like. If you're just talking about things that somebody else will like and you're just copying other people and you're just trying to fit a mold, then you are never going to remain consistent. If you are just copying other people and following their footsteps, instead of just maybe gaining a little bit of insight or knowledge and then making it your own, you will not remain consistent. So don't look at it that way. Don't change yourself to fit anything. Transform what you already have and what you know, and be more aware of yourself. Sit with yourself, literally sit in front of the camera, just talk to it, just go ahead and blurt it out, and stop thinking that you need to be perfect to be good enough. Just get it out there and you will eventually figure out what is right for you and what isn't. The rest will follow. Okay, with that being said, thank you for listening. See you in the next one. Bye.